Blue Protocol Star Resonance is about to get a whole ton of new content, and being on the global version, we're technically going to get a peek of all of this. From 6-man dungeons, 3 new raids, a Halloween event, a roguelike 2.0, of course the story continuation, a brand new system we'll have to go over that'll tie into some roles and class roadmap. We got a ton to talk about. What's up, World Utopia here, back in with another video. Today we're checking out all things Blue Protocol Star Resonance. Okay, so first off here, we've had a ton of new posts for the CN client. That also does actually include a developer interview that just happened today. So I'm going to break down that dev interview. I'm going to translate it from Mandarin, but links in the description for everything if you do want to view it on your own. Really quick, before we jump into the dev interview, if you haven't already, it is never a better time to jump into Blue Protocol. We're getting a ton of new content that basically just unlocked today. The game is completely free to download right now, so if you want to use my link in the description, the pinned comment, or even the QR code on screen, that way you can jump right in. It also does help my channel out a ton, so do please consider using that. Now first off here, they did give Star Resonance Season 2 a name. Translated from the CN client, is basically called Illusory Blooming Dream. And again, as we know, it is launching October 30th with the key maintenance and unlock beats. You can also utilize a lot of this info to actually prepare for Season 2. It might be around 2 to 3 months away for the global client, but it's still good intel to know about. The one thing they're kind of being told right now is to spend their Season 1 currencies. They're currently doing a grace to a full handover season right now, where content is going to roll out in waves for the start of the season events to a mid-season role skill with later season minigames. Again, I'll break those down in depth a little bit more here. Or first off here, we're going to cover the core PvE changes, all the new dungeons, and the story concept. With the story here being post-Asteria infiltrations. Again, they name Aluna here, who is Iarona in ours. They do have a little sneak peek for this, so you'll see some kind of visual imagery here, where you're going to be tracking a flower calamity. And you also get that new companion, Daya, Fafara, and Boris. Again, they might have a new name coming to global like they did with Aluna. We'll have to wait and see on that. I did go over their distinct personalities. Also really cool here, if you've noticed for some of the trailer imagery, they did upgrade the facial animations, so it's really noticeable with Iarona. Very cool to see a refresh take on the facial animations. As I did mention though, and what you probably want to hear about is yes, they're going to be doing 6-man dungeons. They actually do have a fair amount of these planned, 3 so far. The first one is called As the Fallen Deepens, which is the Illusion Bloom mirrored telegraphs where you're breaking the barriers, kind of like what we're used to. They also have one here called Mind Serpent Chase. Now this one is 3 arena tuned to DPS intake, or kind of tanking and then healing, where you're essentially picking your lane, so you'll break off into 2 teams there. So kind of a cool mechanic tied in there with the new 6-man. It seems like you're going to be utilizing 2 tanks, at least for some of these. And then they also have Spirit of the Forest, where you're protecting totems to avoid wipes with free trapped souls during transitions. So kind of akin to like a wave sort of mechanic there. Now there also is some stuff on the rotation mechanics that we'll go over in a bit here, but they do mention some stuff is going to change there from Season 1, might return depending on if the players want it. Next up here though, we did have the 3-player group raid challenges. So this is going to be much more geared to like a really good party or a group of friends that you have, where you really want to hone in on the DPS, healing, and tank. Those will be 3 new ones, again kind of group content here, raid, dungeon, etc. The first one here is being called Transforming Sea, with an escort plus suppress energy, where you're using walls versus knockoffs. So again, they're really honing in on this sort of kind of group mechanic content, probably familiar with other games. Then Escort 1 here. The next one is called 2 King's Foot Flower Armor, where you're crossing realm damage ramp-ups to keep HP even, and floor devices that decide the favored king. The last up here but not least is Flower Stone Blade, where you're essentially eliminating an animated sword with a Bosch that does enlarge. You'll perform a dance to stop the World Ender, where you'll then be warped into a merge phase that needs 2 teams managing corruption. So some pretty fun ones there. Again, they do showcase off some of how those mechanics are going to look, and even new dungeon teasers, which actually did happen in their recent trailer, and also some during the developer livestream. Now, as I did mention, there actually is some class role changes and even rotation changes. So for the role changes, they're going to be doing this mid-season. This is not going to happen at the start of Season 2. But essentially, they're going to do mid-season role skills where now it's 4 per. That's to cover tank swaps, interrupts, targeted mitigation, and single target revives. All without breaking your main rotation, which actually does kind of coincide with this happening later, not Season 2 just yet, but that your specialization bar will expand to 8 buttons, and that your rotations will then be swapped and remapped. So it does look like they want to get people to have a much larger rotation. Instead of it just being kind of fairly simple, a lot of classes do have a really simple rotation, although I'd argue that Icicle Mage is actually pretty active, where Frostbeam is just a couple, 1 or 2, and then to do all of your damage. So it does look like they're kind of getting away from that. They don't want to have the 2-button specs here. So it does look like they want to expand on that, having 8 buttons in total with 4 role skills. So it looks like a lot is going to change with the roles and the class roadmap there. Again, some of these changes will happen in mid-season, with the role skills, with it later being expanded to 8 buttons that will happen after Season 2. Next up here, we did have a new system, and they're calling this one Star Sign Projection. As with everything I've listed here, it might have a different name coming to global. In fact, I would almost guarantee it does. These typically always get renamed in pretty much every game I've ever played that has a CN release. So I'm not really sure what it could be there. Maybe you could put down some names you think it might be. But we do have this section here where you're picking one of 8 core effects as you build your anchor. Now this is much like the emblem system we currently have. However, again, you're kind of picking a node here. There's going to be different node types with inspiration for skill augments, steady for defense, and polar for offense, where you'll then be able to socket something called a battle fantasy, which will have a certain type and quality with a total stat budget 5 times gold T0, or even 5 times a purple T5. So basically being able to upgrade it 5 times. They do mention this new system will be a cross-season carryover, but it will have fixed lines that kind of tie into the crit, haste, and omni auto-scaling here for next season, where the roguelike they're adding to this game will have exclusive star signs plus a Rhapsody slot. Essentially kind of like a wild slot here, which does bring me on to this next section here. They actually do quote 2 things. They want a full casual rule set with tech base for future tile games. And they're also adding, yes, a roguelike 2.0 with bigger maps and better run, better progression, which will have that tie-in to the Star Sign Projection system. So super cool here. They do give a little bit of imagery for both of these and kind of the mini games they want to play into, which I do think is really good for casual play, and just adding extra to the game is never a bad idea. At least in my opinion, if it doesn't affect the main course too much. Now they do also mention there is going to be a new housing update. Wave 1 will be tomorrow's day with Canteen Night Vibes gardening UI that shows color, kind of shape and growth here. And yes, you will finally be able to invite your friends into this housing. Wave 2 will have blueprints where you can share and even import layouts. You of course still need the furniture owned in these blueprints, so if someone gives you a blueprint and you don't own the furniture, you're not going to be able to utilize it, or it's even going to place it without said furniture. But super cool there, they're really leaning into the housing stuff, and they showed off a ton of great features with it. So a lot of new stuff there coming to housing, so if you're into housing stuff, don't worry, there's a ton of stuff planned there. Now of course it wouldn't be a new season without some events and shops. They have some new headliners here, the Bamboo Stream Branch and the Flowing Spender. With some premium card refresh, they're also doing a Halloween drop Night of Oddities. That fashion is landing on October 30th. I do wonder if this is going to come to the global client. Not 100% sure there, they didn't mention if it would. But yeah, we might be seeing this Halloween drop on global as well. They also have a new blind box, which is all the crave now. If you've been anywhere in some of the Korean, Japanese, or even Chinese stores, they have a lot of the blind box stuff. And realistically, it's pretty much going across the entire industry. I've even played into it a little bit myself as well. Yeah, so blind box, all the craze now. They have the Jar of Surprises where you flip tiles with cash rewards. Don't blame them on that one. They also have a new login chain called Illume Photography, where you'll have postcard stamps with cosmetic borders, and even new freebies with a multi-sign-in plus mail and early Duke Rabbit companion. So very, very cool there. A bunch of freebies for just logging in as well. Now there is a few things here they mentioned with the seasonal switch and the essentials. The one thing here they want to say is the 20-man raids will still remain available to challenge. So those are still going to be a thing other than the 6-man dungeons and 3-man raids. The lower tier stuff is still going to be mostly utilized. There will be a difficulty uptick, so expect higher checks on the new map set, where you should adjust builds accordingly. The game is getting a bit easy on global at this point now, so super happy they're ramping up the difficulty there. Really cool there, they actually do give a weekly to-do list with Season 2. And again, as I mentioned, we can utilize this information and kind of prepare for Season 2 and just be ready for it when it does eventually come to global. Of course, log in daily to get that Illume Photography stamp plus those mail rewards. If you're into fashion, you should be clearing your blind box board for fashion tokens and mats. Run each of the new 6-man at least once to practice mirror, break timings, etc. and just kind of explore the new mechanics with that. You should also set your star sign and pre-sort fantasies for those sockets, because that's going to play into a part a lot with your damage and just kind of damage potential. If you're into housing, of course you should kind of pre-plan your blueprint import, and to make sure you're spending any Season 1 currency before the switch happens. Of course, this doesn't pertain to the paid currency, that's going to stay the same, but some of the Season 1 currency is going to switch. Now when Season 2 does happen with Global, I'll have a better guide on this, so we know exactly which currencies kind of aren't going to play a part there, but just know that some of the stuff you can actually spend right now. Again, maybe wait for that guide, maybe wait for the kind of CN players to test everything and see when it actually does get reset there. Overall, that should about cover it for today's video. Basically the new dev interview, all the things they talked about there, and some of the new stuff that's coming to Season 2. Can't wait to see some of it. I'll probably watch a lot of it through Bilibili, and just see some streams going on over there as well. If you enjoyed today's video, like, subscribe, and until the next one, deuces.